Clara walked down the crowded streets, her worn shoes scuffing against the uneven pavement. The city was alive with its usual chaos, horns honking, people shouting, and the smell of fried food and exhaust mingling in the air. She clutched her small, battered suitcase close to her side, her fingers brushing against the old leather straps as if they could offer her comfort. Inside the suitcase were a few changes of clothes, some sheet music she had written herself, and her most precious possession, a small journal filled with melodies she had dreamed of playing for the world. She hadn't eaten properly in 2 days, and her stomach reminded her sharply with every step she took. She had come to this city with hope in her heart, a hope that sometimes felt like a fragile thread ready to snap. Clara had always loved music. It wasn't just a hobby for her. It was a language she understood when words failed. She had spent countless nights sitting by the window of her small, dimly lit room in the countryside, playing an old piano that had seen better days, imagining the day she could play for a real audience. But reality had been harsh. Jobs were scarce, and paying for even a small apartment seemed impossible. She had sent countless letters and emails to music schools and performance halls, but the replies were either cold refusals or no response at all. Today, hunger gnawed at her with a force that made every step heavier. She passed street performers, their cases filled with coins, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. They had audiences willing to drop money into their open cases while she had no platform, no recognition. Her heart sank as she passed a bakery where the smell of fresh bread filled the air. She imagined biting into a warm roll, the butter melting over it, and she shivered from more than just the cold. Clara stopped outside a small cafe, the kind with warm lights and the faint hum of conversation inside. She hesitated, her nerves tight like the strings of a violin. She had never done anything like this before, but desperation has a way of giving courage. She stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly. The warmth hit her immediately, wrapping around her like a blanket. She could see people chatting over coffee, the barista behind the counter moving with practiced efficiency. She approached the counter slowly, trying to look as polite as possible despite her rumbling stomach. "Excuse me," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I was wondering if I could play the piano here. Maybe in exchange for a meal?" There was a pause. The barista, a young man with a faded apron, raised an eyebrow. "Play the piano? Here for a meal?" His tone was a mixture of disbelief and amusement. Clara nodded, hoping her sincerity could bridge the gap of skepticism she could see in his eyes. "Yes," she said. "I just need somewhere to play, and I haven't eaten in a couple of days. I promise I'll give my best performance." The barista chuckled, glancing at his co-workers. A few of them snickered, shaking their heads. "You're serious?" one of them asked. Clara nodded again, a small, determined smile on her lips. She could feel the heat rise to her cheeks, partly from embarrassment and partly from the anxiety of being judged. Some customers turned to look, curiosity piqued by the unusual request. A young man at a corner table whispered to his friend, and they both laughed quietly. Clara's stomach tightened. She felt small and exposed, but she refused to turn back. She had nothing to lose, and perhaps if she was brave enough, she could gain something. The cafe owner, an older woman with sharp eyes, came forward. She crossed her arms, scrutinizing Clara as if trying to weigh her worth. "You want to play for a meal?" she asked, her voice carrying authority. Clara nodded once, firmly this time. The woman's lips pressed together in thought, then she sighed. "All right," she said finally, "but just for a short time. And don't make a mess." Clara's heart lifted. She thanked her, her voice trembling with relief and excitement. She followed the owner to the small piano tucked in a corner of the cafe. It wasn't the grand instrument she had dreamed of, but it was enough. Enough to let her music speak. Enough to show the world what she could do, even if the audience was just a handful of people sipping coffee. She opened her suitcase and took out a few sheets of music, laying them carefully on the piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment. The cafe was quiet now. The murmurs of the other customers hushed, as if they were sensing that something unusual was about to happen. Clara closed her eyes for a second, took a deep breath, and let her fingers fall onto the keys. The first note resonated through the cafe, simple but clear. She played another, and another, gradually finding the rhythm and flow that had lived in her imagination for so long. At first, the sounds were tentative, unsure, as if testing the space around them. But soon they grew stronger, more confident, each note carrying the weight of her experiences, the hunger, the struggle, the relentless hope. She played a piece she had composed herself, one that spoke of longing and resilience. The music seemed to wrap around the listeners, drawing them in without them even realizing it. Some customers leaned forward, curiosity replacing the initial amusement. The barista stopped cleaning the counter for a moment, his eyes widening as he listened. Clara didn't look up. She didn't need to. She was lost in the music, every movement of her fingers telling a story more profound than words could convey. For the first time in days, she felt alive, and it was as if the hunger in her stomach faded, replaced by a warmth that came from creating something pure and beautiful. The cafe had become a small sanctuary, a place where time slowed down and only the music existed. Clara's fingers danced over the keys, flowing from one note to the next, each one filled with emotion. She could feel the energy of the room changing, the laughter and whispers replaced by awe and attention. People who had initially doubted her skill were now silently watching, captivated by the raw emotion she poured into the piano. As she continued to play, Clara allowed herself to remember why she had started this journey in the first place. Music had always been her escape, her companion in lonely nights and her bridge to a world that seemed just out of reach. Now here she was in a small cafe, playing for an audience that hadn't expected much, yet she was giving them her heart with every note. She played not just to earn a meal, but to remind herself that she still had something to offer, something that could not be measured by money or status. The final notes lingered in the air, soft and gentle, as if reluctant to leave the room. Clara slowly lifted her hands from the keys and took a deep breath, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. The cafe was silent for a moment, and then quietly someone clapped. Another joined in, and soon the applause grew, filling the small space with warmth and appreciation. Clara felt her cheeks flush, a mix of pride and relief washing over her. The cafe owner smiled, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "That was impressive," she said softly. Clara nodded, trying to hide her nervous excitement. She had come asking for a meal, uncertain and vulnerable, and now she had offered something that touched people. She realized in that moment that even in her most desperate times, she could create something beautiful, something that could change the way others saw her and perhaps even herself. Clara accepted a small plate of food from the owner, sitting down to eat with a quiet satisfaction that went beyond filling her stomach. The music had done more than earn her a meal. It had given her a sense of purpose and a reminder that no matter how difficult life became, she still had her gift, and that gift was something no one could take away. As she ate, she allowed herself a small smile, knowing this was only the beginning of a journey that would take her further than she had ever dreamed. The moment Clara finished her piece, there was a brief pause, the kind that felt like the world had stopped for a heartbeat. The soft hum of conversation had vanished, replaced by an almost reverent silence. The few customers who had been whispering and glancing at their phones were now staring at her with wide eyes. Clara felt her heart hammer in her chest, unsure if it was fear, excitement, or something else entirely. She looked down at her hands, trembling slightly, and then at the piano keys, her fingers brushing over them as if to reassure herself that she had actually played. A few snickers came from the back of the room, but they were weak, hesitant. Some of the earlier laughter had faded because people were now more curious than mocking. One young man who had been filming with his phone lowered it slowly, caught off guard by the skill he had just witnessed. He exchanged a glance with his friend, and for the first time, both of them looked uncertain, unsure how to react. Clara felt a strange mix of emotions. She had been laughed at, doubted, and barely welcomed when she walked in, but now she sensed something shifting. It wasn't just about playing for a meal anymore. It was about showing herself, standing in front of people who had underestimated her and letting them see what she could do. Her fingers itched to continue, to pour more of herself into the piano, but she also didn't want to push too far, not until she felt how much the room could take. The cafe owner, who had been observing her quietly, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that made the room turn to her. "You have talent," she said simply. Clara blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments had always been rare for her, and hearing it so directly made her feel both nervous and proud. "Talent doesn't always feed you, though," the woman added with a wry smile. Clara laughed softly, shaking her head, acknowledging the truth in those words. The barista, who had initially doubted her, now leaned on the counter, his arms crossed, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I didn't expect that," he admitted quietly. Clara gave him a small smile, a silent acknowledgement that she understood how surprising it must have been to see someone so hungry, so vulnerable, play with such grace and skill. Encouraged by the attention, Clara decided to play another piece, one that was livelier, full of energy and emotion. She let her fingers move freely, no longer just testing the keys but commanding them. The notes danced through the cafe, drawing people in. Conversations had stopped entirely. It felt as if everyone had leaned closer, wanting to catch every sound, every subtle emotion in the music. Some customers shifted in their seats, eyes wide, trying to absorb the unexpected beauty. One older man who had been sipping coffee quietly muttered almost to himself, "Where did she learn to play like that?" His voice carried awe, not criticism. Clara could feel the room's energy change. The initial amusement replaced with wonder and curiosity. As she played, Clara remembered the times she had practiced alone in her small room, the nights she had stayed up until the early hours, perfecting a piece she would never perform publicly. Those hours of solitude, filled with determination and longing, had built the foundation for this moment. She realized that all those struggles had led her here, to a small cafe where a few meals could have seemed like the only reward. But now she was giving something far greater, a glimpse of her soul through music. The cafe owner watched closely, her expression softening. It was rare to see someone so young with such an undeniable gift, and even rarer to see that gift emerge from someone who had so little in the world. The owner thought about the meals she had served that day, the small earnings she had made, and realized that this young woman might have more to offer than anyone had expected. Clara's performance continued, and a few people began to clap in rhythm with the music, at first hesitantly, then with more confidence. The young man who had filmed her earlier finally put his phone down completely, joining in the applause. Others who had laughed at her earlier were now leaning forward, faces full of surprise and admiration. The laughter had vanished entirely, replaced with an energy that was warm and encouraging. Her music filled the small corners of the cafe, reaching even the kitchen where a couple of employees paused to listen. Clara didn't know if they had ever heard someone play like this before, and she could sense the respect growing. It was a feeling she had rarely experienced, being seen for her true self, her talent without judgment or pretense. When she finished the second piece, the room erupted in applause. It was louder this time, more enthusiastic. Clara's cheeks flushed and she allowed herself a small, proud smile. She had come in asking for a meal, uncertain and exposed, and now she had captured the attention and admiration of everyone present. It was a strange, exhilarating sensation, one she had dreamed of but never truly believed could happen. The cafe owner came closer, her steps deliberate, and placed a gentle hand on Clara's shoulder. "You're welcome to play here any time," she said. Clara's heart lifted at the words. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about recognition, about the possibility of finding a place where her music could live and breathe in front of others. She nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. Some customers approached Clara, offering words of encouragement and small tips, though that was never her goal. One young woman said, "You have an amazing gift. Don't ever stop playing." Clara thanked her softly, feeling a deep connection to this stranger who had believed in her talent without hesitation. The barista handed her a cup of tea, and this time Clara accepted it without embarrassment. She sipped slowly, letting the warmth fill her, not just physically but emotionally. The hunger that had driven her here was still present, but it no longer felt overwhelming. Music had given her something stronger, hope, courage, and a sense of belonging, even if only for a short while. As the cafe settled back into its usual rhythm, people lingering over their drinks and conversations resuming, Clara packed her music sheets carefully. She felt a renewed determination inside her. She knew that this was just the beginning, that her journey had only started and that there would be many more challenges ahead. But for now she had proved something to herself and others, that even in the most unlikely circumstances, her talent could shine and touch hearts. Clara left the cafe with a small bag of leftovers and a promise from the owner that she could return to play whenever she wanted. Her steps felt lighter, her heart warmer. The streets no longer seemed harsh and unforgiving. They were full of possibilities, waiting for her to take the next step. She thought about all the music she still wanted to play, the people she wanted to reach, and the life she hoped to build with her piano as her companion. As she walked through the city, the sounds of her performance lingered in her mind, a melody she would carry with her long after she left the cafe. The laughter and doubt she had faced earlier now seemed distant, replaced by a quiet confidence that maybe, just maybe, she could make her dreams real. Clara smiled softly to herself, knowing that she had turned a small act of courage into a moment that could change her life forever. She had asked for a meal and she had given music, and in that exchange she had found something far more valuable: belief in herself. Clara left the cafe that evening with a heart full of emotions she could hardly name. The streets were quieter now, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from a brief drizzle earlier. She walked slowly, savoring the feeling of having finally been seen for who she was, not just as a girl asking for a meal, but as someone with a gift. Her fingers itched to touch the keys again, to continue expressing the melodies that had been trapped inside her for so long. Her small room in a nearby boarding house was modest, with peeling paint and a single lamp that barely lit the corner where her suitcase sat. She placed her few belongings carefully on the bed, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she opened her journal and looked at the sheets of music she had written over the years. They were filled with scribbles, notes, and markings that only she could fully understand. Each one carried a memory, a moment of joy, sadness, or hope. Tonight, those memories felt more alive than ever. Clara thought about the cafe, the faces of the people who had listened, and even the initial skepticism she had encountered. It struck her that their doubt hadn't diminished her music. It had only made her determination stronger. She had always believed in her talent even when no one else did, and tonight that belief had begun to ripple outwards. The applause, the encouraging words, even the smallest gestures of kindness, like a cup of tea offered by the barista, reminded her that her music could reach beyond her small, lonely world. The next morning, Clara woke early, her mind already buzzing with ideas for new compositions. Hunger still lingered, but she had learned that her spirit could be fed as much by recognition and opportunity as by food. She made her way to a nearby park, where the sound of birds and distant city life mingled with her own thoughts. She found a bench under a large oak tree, opened her journal, and began to compose, letting her pencil glide over the paper as she shaped new melodies. Hours passed unnoticed, the sunlight moving across her page as she wrote. Each note was a story, each pause a reflection of the life she had lived and the experiences she hoped to share. Clara felt a strange mixture of peace and anticipation. Peace because she was doing what she loved, and anticipation because she knew that the world outside the park was waiting to hear her music, even if they didn't know it yet. She returned to the cafe later that day, hesitant but hopeful. The owner greeted her with a warm smile, and without needing to ask, Clara set up her music sheets and prepared to play. Today she felt more confident, more in control of her performance. The cafe was busier, and people who had been skeptical yesterday were now looking at her with curiosity and expectation. Some regulars had returned, whispering among themselves about the girl who had played so beautifully the day before. As Clara's fingers touched the keys, she felt the familiar rush of excitement. The music flowed naturally, as if her hands had a mind of their own, and the audience was drawn in almost immediately. People stopped mid-conversation, their attention captured by the intricate melodies. She played a piece that was joyful yet tender, a combination that made listeners smile and pause in reflection at the same time. Among the crowd, she noticed a man with a notebook, scribbling furiously as he listened. Clara didn't know who he was, but his focus on her performance made her feel important, seen, and appreciated. The cafe owner, standing nearby, gave a discreet nod of encouragement. Clara's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. She knew that every note mattered. Every moment of music had the potential to reach someone deeply, just as it had touched her own heart countless times. During a brief pause in her performance, a young woman approached her, eyes wide with admiration. "Your music? It's incredible," she whispered. "I've never heard anything like it." Clara smiled gently, nodding in acknowledgement. Compliments had always felt strange to her, but today they fueled her, reminding her that she had found a place where her talent could exist and be celebrated. As she continued playing, Clara felt a connection with everyone in the cafe. Each person's expression, each subtle reaction became part of the performance, guiding her as she navigated through complex passages and delicate phrases. She realized that music was not just about her own expression anymore. It was about sharing, touching others, and creating an unspoken bond between herself and those who listened. Hours passed quickly. Clara's fingers moved with precision and passion, leaving behind a trail of emotion that lingered long after the notes faded. When she finally rested her hands on the keys, the cafe erupted in applause, louder and more enthusiastic than the day before. Clara felt a surge of happiness she had never experienced. She had come seeking a meal and had received so much more: acceptance, recognition, and the thrill of connecting with people through her music. The cafe owner approached again, her face soft with surprise and approval. "You have a gift," she said quietly. "I think people need to hear you more widely." Clara's heart raced. This was the first time someone had suggested that her music could reach beyond the cafe walls. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. She nodded, her mind already spinning with possibilities and ideas for the future. The man with the notebook approached Clara cautiously. "I work with a small music studio," he said, introducing himself. "I've never seen anyone play like you. If you're willing, I'd like to help you record some of your pieces. There's an audience out there that would love your music." Clara's eyes widened. The opportunity she had only dreamed of seemed to be presenting itself, and she felt a wave of hope wash over her. She accepted his offer with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The idea of recording, sharing her music with people she had never met, and stepping into a world she had only imagined before was overwhelming. Yet for the first time in a long while, she felt ready. Clara understood that her talent was no longer a secret hidden in her small room. It was something she could offer to the world, something that could inspire and move others. After the cafe closed that evening, Clara walked back to her boarding house, replaying the events of the day in her mind. She thought about how far she had come, from asking for a simple meal to being offered a chance to record her music. The journey was just beginning, but she felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything she had known before. She knew there would be challenges ahead, doubts and fears that would try to pull her back. But she also knew that music was her strength, her language and her guide. That night, as Clara lay in bed, she couldn't stop smiling. The melodies she had played, the reactions of the people in the cafe, and the unexpected opportunities that had appeared all mingled in her thoughts. She felt alive in a way that hunger and hardship had never allowed. Music had given her a new sense of identity, one that was more than just a girl struggling to survive. She was a musician, a creator, and perhaps, just perhaps, a person whose talent could change her life forever. In the days that followed, Clara's visits to the cafe became more frequent. She developed a small following of regular customers who came specifically to hear her play. The barista began to treat her with a newfound respect, and even the skeptical patrons started to smile and greet her warmly. Each performance built her confidence, her skills, and her belief in herself. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Perseverance, courage, and the willingness to step into the unknown were just as important. Clara also began to explore the city more intentionally. She discovered small music shops, libraries, and community centers where she could meet other musicians and learn new techniques. She carried her journal with her everywhere, capturing ideas, inspirations, and melodies that could later be developed into full compositions. Every interaction, every street she walked down seemed to offer something new to her music. She was not only surviving but growing, expanding her world one note at a time. The man from the music studio kept in touch, helping her navigate the technical aspects of recording and offering guidance on presenting her music professionally. Clara soaked up every piece of advice, determined to make the most of the opportunity she had been given. She understood that talent opened doors, but hard work and dedication were what allowed her to walk through them. As weeks turned into months, Clara's music began to reach a wider audience. Small recordings shared online brought messages of encouragement, admiration, and even offers to perform at local events. Her life, once limited by hunger and uncertainty, was slowly transforming. Yet she never forgot the cafe, the humble place where she had first dared to ask for a meal and play. It remained her sanctuary, a reminder that courage, however small, could change everything. Through it all, Clara held on to the lessons she had learned. that persistence mattered, that belief in oneself could overcome doubt, and that music, when shared honestly, had the power to touch lives in ways no one could anticipate. She continued to play every day, her fingers dancing over the keys, her heart full of hope and gratitude, knowing that this was just the beginning of a journey that would carry her further than she had ever dreamed. Clara entered the cafe that morning with a quiet determination that seemed to radiate from her every movement. The early light of the sun spilled across the streets, highlighting puddles left from the previous night's rain. She carried her journal and a small bag containing sheet music she had recently composed. Today felt different. There was a sense in the air that something important was about to happen, though she did not yet know what it might be. The cafe was busier than usual. A few regular customers had arrived, greeting Clara warmly as they took their seats. She noticed curious glances from new patrons, drawn in by whispers of the pianist whose music had already begun to captivate people. The barista smiled knowingly, and even the cafe owner seemed to watch with a mixture of anticipation and pride. Clara felt a flutter of nerves, but they were the good kind, the kind that came before a performance that truly mattered. She moved to the piano, setting down her music carefully. Her fingers hovered over the keys and she took a deep breath. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, but as soon as she felt the resonance, she allowed herself to fully engage. She played a piece she had been perfecting for weeks, one that contained both gentle, flowing melodies and sudden, surprising bursts of intensity. Each note carried emotion, a story that had been building inside her since she first touched the piano many years ago. At first, the cafe was quiet, customers sipping coffee and observing politely. But gradually, the music began to demand attention. Heads turned, conversations stopped, and even the usually bustling kitchen fell silent for a moment. Clara noticed the reactions of her listeners. Some eyes widened, mouths slightly open in awe. Others leaned forward instinctively, drawn closer by the beauty and skill of what they were hearing. Even those who had once doubted her ability could not hide their amazement. A man sitting at the far end of the cafe put down his newspaper, watching with rapt attention. He had been a critic for a small but respected local music journal. Clara did not notice him at first, lost in the rhythm and flow of her performance. But he took careful notes, jotting down impressions and details, clearly impressed. This was the first time someone from outside her immediate circle was witnessing her talent in such a concentrated way, and the significance of that fact was not lost on her. Clara's fingers moved with a combination of precision and freedom. The music seemed to carry her beyond the confines of the small cafe, transforming the space into a stage far larger than the room itself. She could feel the energy of the audience, their anticipation feeding her performance, each note more alive than the last. She played a section that was particularly intricate, testing her speed and control, and she could see the admiration in the eyes of everyone around her. Some whispered quietly to one another, unable to contain their surprise. Suddenly, a little girl in the corner, who had been shyly observing from her mother's side, reached forward and tapped on the piano bench. Clara smiled warmly at her and continued, letting the music become more playful, more joyful. The girl giggled, and a few other children in the cafe started to clap along, encouraging Clara without knowing it. The atmosphere became electric, alive with shared emotion. The music was no longer just Clara's expression. It had become a bridge connecting everyone in the room. The cafe owner approached discreetly, standing near the back. She had witnessed many performances, but Clara's talent was different. It was raw, genuine, and powerful in a way that could not be manufactured or faked. The owner whispered to the barista, commenting on how extraordinary it was that someone so young could command such presence. Clara, unaware of their conversation, continued to play, feeling a deep connection to everyone listening. As the piece reached its climax, Clara allowed herself to fully express the emotions she had held in for so long: the frustration of struggle, the joy of discovery, the quiet longing for recognition. Every note was infused with honesty, every pause deliberate, drawing listeners into a shared emotional journey. She noticed a few customers wiping away tears, moved by the unexpected depth and intensity of her music. This was not just skill, it was the unveiling of something profoundly human, a glimpse into her very soul. When the final note resonated and lingered in the air, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then gradually the applause began, small at first and then growing louder, more sustained. Clara's heart raced as she looked up, taking in the faces of her listeners. The laughter and doubt of days past had vanished entirely. In its place was admiration, respect, and an undeniable recognition of her genius. The man with the notebook stood and approached her. "That was incredible," he said, voice filled with awe. "I would like to write about this, to share it with others who would appreciate your music. You have a rare gift and it deserves to be heard." Clara felt a mixture of humility and pride. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the validation she had longed for but had never expected to receive so suddenly. The cafe owner stepped closer, smiling softly. "You should consider performing more publicly," she said. "Not just here, but at events, small concerts, anything you feel ready for. People need to experience this." Clara's mind raced with possibilities. She had dreamed of larger stages, of audiences who would listen and feel, but it had always seemed distant. Now that dream felt tangible, almost within reach. Clara spent the next few days preparing for a small local music showcase. The man who had been taking notes offered guidance, helping her organize her repertoire and giving advice on presentation and technique. Clara absorbed every word, practicing diligently, and discovering that her music had the power not just to entertain but to move people, to create shared experiences and connections. On the day of the showcase, Clara arrived early, her journal and sheet music in hand. The venue was modest but welcoming, filled with people curious to see the pianist who had captured attention at the cafe. As she stepped onto the small stage, she felt a calm determination. The nerves were there, but they were tempered by confidence built from the previous performances. Clara knew that this was her moment to reveal the full depth of her ability. The first note resonated through the hall, clear and confident. Clara's fingers danced across the keys, shaping a piece that had taken weeks to perfect. The audience listened intently, drawn into the emotional landscape she was creating. Clara could feel their reactions, their subtle shifts in attention, their engagement with every phrase. This was more than music. It was communication, a dialogue that transcended words. As the performance continued, Clara noticed the impact her music had on the audience. Some closed their eyes, letting the melodies wash over them. Others leaned forward, rapt with attention, as if hanging on every note. There were moments of laughter and lightness, moments of quiet reflection, all guided by the ebb and flow of her playing. She felt a profound connection, a shared understanding that music could create spaces where people felt seen, heard, and moved. When the final chord hung in the air, silence followed, deep and reverent. Then applause erupted, filling the room with warmth and energy. Clara stood, humbled and exhilarated. She had not only played for herself, but had reached the hearts of an audience who had never met her before, who had no idea of the struggles she had faced to reach this point. The validation was overwhelming, yet it was accompanied by a deep sense of purpose. Her music was meant to be shared, to touch lives, to create moments of connection and understanding. Clara left the stage with a sense of accomplishment and determination. She knew this was only the beginning, that her talent was a seed that could grow and reach even further. The cafe, the streets, and the small stages had been her training ground, but now she was ready to step into a wider world. Her journey was far from over, but the unveiling of her hidden genius had begun, and it was a revelation not only to those around her but also to herself. In the days that followed, Clara continued to play at the cafe, but now with a different sense of purpose. She was no longer just a girl asking for a meal. She was a musician, an artist with the power to captivate and inspire. The man with the notebook helped her reach new audiences, sharing her music with local publications and small radio stations. Clara's confidence grew alongside her skill, and she began to dream even bigger, knowing that the world was ready to listen if she was brave enough to continue sharing her gift. The experience taught Clara that talent alone was not enough. Courage, perseverance, and the willingness to step into the unknown were equally important. She had faced doubt and mockery, hunger and uncertainty, yet through it all she had remained true to herself and her music. That truth, expressed through the piano, had opened doors she had never imagined, revealing a path filled with possibility, hope, and the promise of a future shaped by her own hands and melodies. Clara returned to the cafe the following morning with a sense of excitement that made her steps lighter than usual. The city outside was bustling, the sounds of traffic, bicycles, and pedestrians blending into a rhythm that almost felt musical. She carried her journal, some new sheet music she had been working on, and a quiet hope that today would bring something special. The cafe, bathed in the soft morning light, welcomed her like an old friend. The familiar smell of coffee and baked goods filled her senses, grounding her in a comforting reality amidst the whirlwind of new experiences. As she approached the piano, Clara noticed several new faces among the regulars. Word of her talent had begun to spread, and some patrons had come specifically to hear her play. A few young people whispered excitedly to each other, pointing toward her as she arranged her music. Clara's heart fluttered, a mixture of nerves and anticipation, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself that this was what she loved, and that her music had the power to reach people in ways words could not. She began to play a soft, flowing piece, her fingers gliding effortlessly over the keys. The notes carried a gentle warmth, filling the cafe with a sense of calm and beauty. People paused in their conversations, listening intently. Clara felt a familiar connection forming, the invisible thread that tied her music to the hearts of those around her. Every note she played seemed to speak directly to them, expressing feelings that were universal: hope, longing, joy, and resilience. As the piece continued, Clara noticed the reactions of the audience. A young man sitting near the window had tears in his eyes, his lips pressed together to hold back emotion. An older woman at the counter whispered to her friend, commenting on the depth of Clara's expression. Even the barista, usually focused on his work, had stopped to listen, a look of admiration and respect on his face. Clara's confidence grew, fueled by the way her music touched those around her. Midway through her performance, the cafe door opened, and a man stepped in carrying a small camera. He introduced himself as a local journalist who had heard about the pianist capturing the hearts of the city. Clara smiled politely, returning her attention to the piano, though she felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The journalist sat up discreetly, taking photographs and notes without disturbing the performance. Clara had grown used to small audiences, but this was different. This was recognition, a sign that her talent was being noticed beyond the cafe walls. As she played a more intricate piece, one that blended delicate melodies with sudden bursts of intensity, Clara felt a sense of freedom. The music was no longer just an expression of her own emotions. It had become a shared experience, a dialogue with the people listening. Each pause, each flourish seemed to resonate with someone in the room, drawing them closer into the story she was telling. She realized that her music could create a space where people felt connected, understood, and inspired. When the final note lingered in the air, the cafe erupted into applause. Clara looked up, smiling at the faces around her, feeling a warmth that went beyond simple appreciation. The journalist approached her, notebook in hand. "Your talent is extraordinary," he said. "I'd like to write a feature about you to share your story and your music with the wider community." "People need to know about this." Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She had dreamed of recognition, but hearing it expressed so directly was overwhelming in the best way. The cafe owner approached as well, a gentle smile on her face. "I think this is the start of something bigger for you," she said softly. "There are opportunities out there and you deserve to explore them. If you're ready, I can help you connect with people who can support your music further." Clara felt her chest tighten with emotion. For the first time, she felt that her dreams were not only possible but within reach. The encouragement and support of those who had once doubted her talent now gave her strength to take the next step. Over the next few weeks, Clara's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The journalist's article was published in a local newspaper, highlighting her journey from asking for a meal to becoming a musician who captured the hearts of the city. The response was immediate. Emails and messages came from people who wanted to hear her play, to support her music, and to offer opportunities to perform at local events. Clara's inbox, once empty and filled with rejection letters, now overflowed with possibilities. One day, she received a call from a community center that organized local performances. They invited her to play at a small concert, promising an audience eager to listen and experience live music. Clara felt a thrill she had not known in years. She accepted immediately, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. This was her first step into a larger world, a chance to share her music with more people and to see the impact it could have beyond the cafe walls. In preparation for the performance, Clara spent hours practicing in her small room, refining each piece with care and attention. She experimented with new techniques, added subtle nuances to her compositions, and rehearsed until each note felt intentional and alive. Her fingers moved over the piano keys with increasing confidence, each day strengthening her skills and deepening her connection to the music. The day of the community performance arrived, and Clara felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement. The venue was modest, filled with chairs arranged for an audience, and a small stage with a piano at its center. People began to arrive, filling the seats with anticipation. Clara took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had come a long way from the girl who had asked for a meal in exchange for music. This was her moment to share her gift on a larger scale. As she began to play, Clara noticed the audience's reactions. People leaned forward, listening intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of awe and emotion. She played a range of pieces, from soft, flowing melodies to energetic, joyful compositions, each one telling a story of struggle, hope, and triumph. The connection she felt with the audience was palpable, the energy in the room feeding her performance and inspiring her to give her very best. After the final note resonated, the audience erupted into applause. Clara stood feeling a mixture of exhilaration and humility. She had not only played her music, but had shared her story through every note, every pause, and every flourish. The experience reinforced her belief in herself and her talent, showing her that perseverance and courage could open doors she had once thought were closed forever. Following the performance, several audience members approached her, praising her skill and expressing interest in future collaborations. A local music teacher offered to give her guidance and support, while another suggested that she consider recording some of her compositions. Clara listened attentively, grateful for the opportunities and encouragement she was receiving. Each conversation strengthened her resolve and fueled her determination to continue pursuing her dreams. Returning to the cafe later that evening, Clara reflected on the journey she had taken over the past months. From the girl who had timidly asked for a meal to the musician performing in front of appreciative audiences, she had grown in confidence, skill, and self-belief. Her music had opened doors, created connections, and inspired people in ways she had never imagined. She realized that the courage to take the first step, to play her music despite doubt and fear, had been the key to everything that followed. As she packed up her sheet music and prepared to leave, Clara felt a sense of gratitude for the cafe, the people who had supported her, and the opportunities that had come her way. She understood that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she had proven to herself that she was capable of achieving more than she had ever dreamed. Her music had become not only a source of personal fulfillment, but also a bridge connecting her to the wider world, a testament to the power of talent, perseverance, and belief in oneself. In the days and weeks that followed, Clara continued to perform at the cafe and other local venues, each performance strengthening her reputation and expanding her audience. Her confidence grew alongside her skill, and she began to dream even bigger, imagining opportunities to share her music beyond the city, to inspire and touch the hearts of people she had never met. She carried with her the lessons she had learned, that talent alone was not enough, that courage and persistence were essential, and that the willingness to step into the unknown could transform a life in ways that were both unexpected and extraordinary. Clara walked through the city streets that morning with a sense of quiet confidence. The early sunlight glinted off the buildings and the air was filled with the hum of daily life. She carried her journal and her sheet music, her mind already alive with melodies she wanted to bring to life. Each step felt lighter than before, a reflection of the journey she had traveled. From the girl who had once asked for a meal in exchange for music to the pianist who was now known and celebrated by many, Clara had come a long way, and yet the road ahead still held endless possibilities. She arrived at the cafe, which had become both a sanctuary and a stage for her music. The familiar scent of coffee and baked goods greeted her, as did the smiles of the regulars who had come to expect her performances. Today, however, felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if the city itself knew that this performance was special. Clara set down her music and sat at the piano, her fingers brushing over the keys as she took a deep breath. The first notes of her piece filled the cafe, soft and delicate, weaving through the conversations and footsteps around her. But soon the music grew bolder, more expressive. carrying with it all the emotions Clara had experienced over the past months. The audience, both familiar and new, fell silent, captivated by the depth and beauty of her performance. Clara played with a freedom and passion that could only come from years of longing, struggle, and hope. Each note was a testament to her journey, a story told through sound. Among the audience was a local music producer who had heard about Clara through word of mouth and the previous performances she had given. He had come to witness her talent firsthand, curious if the stories were true. As he watched her fingers dance across the keys, the subtle expressions on her face and the power she commanded over the music, he realized that Clara was someone extraordinary. He whispered to an assistant, suggesting that they speak with her after the performance about potential opportunities that could change her life. Clara noticed the producer only in passing, her focus entirely on the music. She felt a sense of liberation as she moved through each composition, letting her emotions flow freely and connecting with every listener in the room. People leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder, some closing their eyes to immerse themselves fully in the sound. She could feel their hearts responding to the highs and lows, the gentle whispers and the powerful crescendos, and in that response, she found a reflection of her own spirit. The performance lasted for nearly an hour, each piece more intricate and expressive than the last. When she reached the final piece, a composition she had written to capture the journey from struggle to triumph, Clara played with all her heart. The music rose and fell like waves, carrying the audience on a journey of emotion, and when the final note lingered in the air, a silence followed heavy with awe and reverence. Then, the applause erupted, filling the cafe with a wave of sound that left Clara momentarily stunned. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and smiling, their faces reflecting genuine admiration and respect. Clara's cheeks flushed, a mix of pride, humility, and joy flooding her at the overwhelming response. She had given everything she had in that performance, and the reaction reminded her why she had chosen this path, why she had persevered through hunger, doubt, and fear. The producer approached her cautiously, offering a warm smile. "Your music is incredible," he said. "I would like to discuss opportunities to record your pieces professionally and perform on a larger stage. The world needs to hear this." Clara listened carefully, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. This was the moment she had dreamed of, the recognition she had longed for, and the chance to share her music far beyond the walls of the cafe. Over the next few weeks, Clara worked closely with the producer, preparing for recording sessions and organizing live performances in larger venues. She refined her pieces, experimented with new styles, and practiced relentlessly, driven by the excitement of bringing her music to a wider audience. Each day brought new challenges, but Clara met them with determination, knowing that every effort brought her closer to realizing her dreams. Recording her first album was a transformative experience. Clara had never worked with professional sound engineers or sophisticated equipment, but she embraced the learning process with eagerness and humility. She discovered nuances in her playing she had never noticed before, learned to adapt her compositions for different acoustics, and found ways to express emotion more powerfully through her music. Each session left her both exhausted and exhilarated, knowing that she was building something that would touch people far beyond her immediate surroundings. Her first public performance after recording the album was in a small concert hall, filled with people who had heard about her through the cafe, local media, and social networks. Clara felt a surge of nerves as she stepped onto the stage, but the familiar thrill of playing for an audience steadied her. As her fingers touched the keys, the first notes resonated through the hall, clear and beautiful, capturing the attention and imagination of everyone present. Clara poured her heart into every piece, telling a story through the music that transcended words and touched the soul. The audience responded with overwhelming warmth. Applause, cheers, and standing ovations followed each piece, and Clara felt a profound sense of connection. She realized that her music had the power to bring people together, to inspire and uplift them, and to create moments of shared emotion that were rare and precious. The journey from a small cafe performance to a concert hall had been remarkable, and Clara understood that it was only the beginning. After the concert, Clara received invitations to perform in other cities, collaborate with musicians, and participate in cultural events. Her life had transformed in ways she had never imagined. She had gone from a girl asking for a meal to a respected musician whose talent and dedication were recognized and celebrated. Clara embraced these opportunities with gratitude, always remembering the humble beginnings that had shaped her journey and the courage it had taken to take the first step. In her personal life, Clara continued to practice and compose, exploring new melodies and experimenting with different musical styles. She remained connected to the cafe where her journey had begun, returning to play for familiar faces and to inspire others who might be struggling, reminding them that talent, persistence, and courage could open doors in unexpected ways. The cafe had become a symbol of hope and a reminder that even small acts of bravery could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Clara also began mentoring young musicians who showed promise but lacked confidence or resources. She shared her experiences, offering guidance, encouragement, and practical advice. She wanted others to know that their dreams were possible, that their music could reach beyond their own expectations if they had the courage to take risks and believe in themselves. Mentoring became a source of joy and fulfillment as she witnessed the growth and achievements of those she helped. Despite her growing fame and busy schedule, Clara remained humble and focused on her music. She understood that success was not simply about recognition or opportunities. It was about the joy of creating, the impact of connecting with others, and the ability to inspire and be inspired. Each note she played carried meaning. Each composition was a reflection of her journey, and each performance was an opportunity to share a part of her soul with the world. Years later, Clara reflected on her journey with a sense of gratitude and wonder. From the girl who had timidly asked for a meal in exchange for playing to the musician performing in concert halls and recording albums, she had overcome doubt, hunger, and fear through perseverance, courage, and dedication. Her music had touched countless lives, and her story had inspired many to pursue their own dreams despite obstacles. Clara understood that her journey was not defined solely by talent or opportunity, but by the choices she had made, the risks she had taken, and the belief she had maintained in herself. She had learned that even in moments of uncertainty, the willingness to step forward, to take action, and to share one's gift could create profound and lasting change. Her music was more than a career. It was a legacy, a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the human spirit. Looking out over a crowded concert hall during one of her performances, Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The faces of the audience reflected engagement, emotion, and appreciation. Every note she played carried a story, a journey from struggle to triumph, and every pause created space for reflection and connection. In that moment, Clara knew that her journey, which had begun with a simple request for a meal, had blossomed into a life filled with purpose, meaning, and joy. Clara's story became known not just for her talent, but for the courage, persistence, and heart that had propelled her forward. She had shown the world that true genius often emerges in the most unexpected places, and that opportunities can arise when one dares to ask, to perform, and to believe in oneself. Her music continued to inspire, to comfort, and to connect, a reminder that even the smallest beginnings could lead to extraordinary journeys.